Do you want to learn how to fly helicopters in simulators like Microsoft Flight Simulator, DCS or X-Plane? In this video, I'll get you up and running quickly with the essentials, from takeoff to landing, so you're ready to take control like a pro. Let's get started. But first up, here's a video of a businessman who bought his own helicopter and never even bothered to take any lessons. If this is you, then you've come to the right place. Okay, let's do it. Now, in order to fly a helicopter, you first need to know that it is controlled by three main inputs, namely the cyclic, the anti-torque pedals, and the collective. The collective changes the pitch of all rotor blades, which in turn pulls your helicopter upwards. Lowering the collective reduces the pitch, allowing the helicopter to descend. So basically, it controls whether your helicopter goes up or down. The cyclic changes the angle of each blade individually as they rotate around the rotor disc, and in turn makes your helicopter go forward, backward or sideways. And the anti-torque pedals change the pitch of your tail rotor, and this in turn makes your helicopter turn around its vertical axis. Now, that may all sound easy enough, but there's a big but here. You see, in helicopters, changing one control directly influences the others. For instance, when you pull collective, it increases torque, which makes the helicopter want to spin in the opposite direction of the rotor blades. When you push the cyclic forward, you change the helicopter's attitude, redirecting some lift horizontally, which makes your helicopter lose altitude. And then, when you use the anti-torque pedals, you draw a bit of extra power from the engine, which can slightly affect lift, especially in high-powered hover. So for every action, you have to make a counter adjustment, or you might just find yourself plummeting from the sky faster than expected. So now I can hear you think, then how do I get up and running? I'm glad you asked. Let's hop in. Alright, we're currently in a OH-6 helicopter. In this helicopter, our rotor blades are spinning to the left. It's important to know. Now, hovering a helicopter feels like balancing it on a bubble of air, and this bubble of air is pretty turbulent, so you'll have to make a lot of tiny adjustments. Now, one mistake most beginners make is to overcorrect. When your helicopter starts moving or rotating in one direction, you can end up overcorrecting, which requires another correction, which in turn you'll probably overcorrect again. So, here's the big tip. Just loosen that grip. Relax. Okay, we're about to pull ourselves up into a hover. We do this by raising the collective. Remember, raising the collective increases torque. Since our rotor blades are spinning to the left, our helicopter is going to try to spin to the right. So, remember to push your anti-torque pedal to the left. Now, because we're adding anti-torque pedal to the left, the helicopter is also going to want to move to the right. So, also remember to move your cyclic to the left to counteract this. You know what? We'll do it live! So, remember, raise the collective, add some left anti-torque pedal, and move your cyclic slightly to the left. And keep raising that collective until we get off the ground. And now, just small adjustments. Easy. If you feel like you're starting to overcompensate, just keep your controls there for a second and see what happens. There's a good chance that she will stabilize herself. Well done! This is probably the hardest part of flying a helicopter. If you get this under control, man, you're almost there. Alright, now, before we go any further, let's take a moment to familiarize ourselves with the cockpit for a second. First up, the rotor RPM gauge. This gauge is pretty important because it shows the rotor speed, and that's pretty important for staying in the air. If the RPM drops too low, the rotor won't be able to generate enough lift, and if it's too high, it could cause structural damage. So keeping an eye on this gauge is definitely not a luxury. Next up, my personal favorite, the torque gauge. The torque gauge tells you how much strain you're putting on the engine. High torque levels can overwork the engine. So, monitoring this gauge will definitely help you avoid overloading the engine, which you will find out is very important during climbs, while hovering, or doing other very tasky maneuvers like lifting cargo. The safe zone is conveniently colored in green. as long as the needle stays there, you're in good shape. The vertical speed indicator. This nifty little gauge shows you, just like the name suggests, your vertical speed. It lets you see at a glance if you're climbing, descending, or holding steady. So, keep an eye on this gauge, especially when coming in for a landing or hovering at altitude. There are situations where you might unexpectedly start losing altitude. More on that later, but consider this gauge your friend. It can help keep you out of trouble. Let's speed it up a little bit. The attitude indicator. This gauge shows your helicopter's pitch and roll angles and will help you keep maintain level flight, especially handy in low-level visibility situations. The ball beneath it is the slip indicator. When it's off-center, it means your helicopter is slipping sideways through the air. Use your anti-torque pedals to bring the ball back to center for a coordinated and stable flight. The altimeter. The altimeter shows your altitude above sea level. Last up, the airspeed indicator. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Your airspeed. Cool. Who's ready to fly? You already know the most challenging part about flying, hovering. So let's continue where we left off. I'm gonna bring her up into a hover. So let's pull some collective. Apply left anti-torque pedal and apply left cyclic. Now in order to start flying forward, we're just slightly gonna push the cyclic forward. Very nice. We're almost reaching what's called translational lift. Usually, at around 16 to 24 knots, you'll notice that the helicopter is starting to climb. It's happening right now, and you can also see it on the vertical speed indicator, which we mentioned during the cockpit familiarization. As you can see, we're gaining quite some altitude. Now, if you want to keep your altitude, you could push your cyclic forward a bit more. However, that will increase your airspeed. You could also choose to lower your collective a bit, which I'm going to do right now. Now check that vertical airspeed indicator again. As you can see, we're now barely gaining any altitude, and I'm trying to keep it at around 0 feet per minute. Are you ready for your first turn? Let's put in some left cyclic. If you see the slip ball move off center, add some left anti-torque pedal to keep the flight balanced. Did you already notice that flying a helicopter in forward flight is almost as straightforward as flying an airplane? Pretty cool, huh? Alright, we're almost out of our left turn. What we're going to do now is gently push the cyclic to the right to level off and head toward the left corner of the field where we took off from. Now that we're out of our turn, check your gauges again. Check your torque, RPM, airspeed and vertical speed. At the end of this field, we'll start coming back around for a landing. But our airspeed is a little fast right now. We are currently at 19 knots, as you can see on the airspeed indicator. So, what we're gonna do is we're going to bleed off our airspeed by getting a nose-high attitude of about 5 to 10 degrees. However, as you can see on our vertical speed indicator, this results in us gaining altitude. Which is not ideal if you're trying to land, because losing altitude is essential to landing. So let's try that again. This time we'll coordinate the cyclic and the collective together. And while doing this, we'll keep a close eye on the vertical speed indicator to ensure we're not unintentionally climbing or descending. Now I'm pulling the cyclic and lowering the collective, but I'm still gaining a bit of altitude, so we just need to lower the collective a bit more. As you can see, it's a fine balance. Changing one input will always affect the others. The field is off to our right. It's about time to turn toward it, aiming for a descent rate of about 500 feet per minute, give or take. Alright, now don't be scared of what I'm going to tell you now. It needs to be said. As we come in for our landing and start slowing down, we'll pass through translational lift again, but in reverse. An easy indication of translational lift is that the helicopter will start shaking a bit. When we enter translational lift again, there are a few key things to watch out for. First, you'll likely notice a loss of altitude, so be prepared to pull more collective to compensate. But with the added collective, torque will also increase again, causing the helicopter to want to spin to the right. Be ready to add some left anti-torque pedal to keep it steady. As your speed and altitude decrease, you will slowly come into a hover. Remember, small adjustments are key, and loosen that grip. Also, don't come in too steep, because you can get into a vortex ring state, but we're not getting into that right now. This is a crucial part of the landing, so keep your focus outside the cockpit first and check your instruments second. Make sure you keep an eye on the spot where you're aiming to land. See that shaking? That's translational lift. Remember to pull collective and add anti-torque pedal. And don't be in a hurry, just relax. As you get closer to the ground, you will enter ground effect. This is a pocket of air generated by your own rotor blades that create additional lift. So you'll notice that as you are trying to land, it requires you to slowly lower the collective a bit more to compensate for this extra lift. So slowly lower the collective. As you can see, it's a bit tricky to gauge your exact height without VR. If you can get your hands on a VR headset, it will completely transform your spatial awareness and you will know how high you are above the ground. But if not, just keep descending, you will touch down sooner or later. There we are! We made it back safe and sound. Well done! And now, 2 more things that can save your virtual life. First up, an engine out landing. Also known as an auto-rotation. Wait, what? A helicopter can land without its engine? Oh yes. And it's actually one of my favorite things to practice in a simulator. I'll cover this in more detail in another video, but here's the basic idea. As soon as you lose your engine, you'll immediately lower your collective and maintain forward speed. This lets the air flow up through the rotor blades, keeping them spinning and preserving RPMs. Then, when you're just above the ground, you'll pull up your collective to use that stored energy, cushioning your landing. And the second one is preventing situations like loss of tail rotor effectiveness, settling with power, and vortex ring state. These phenomena can pull you out of the sky in just a matter of seconds. But more on that in a later video. Let me know how your first flight went in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. If you learned something new, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button and make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.